Okay.
Hi there, everyone. We'll get started on our next session soon. Before that, I would like to mention that the voting for the best SIC resource is open, so if you guys could please take a vote. And also that the copies for the DSA family-friendly booklet in all EU languages are available outside. Please do grab one. And let's get started with our session ahead today. So I would like to begin with a question. What are the next steps needed to create a better online environment where parents can confidently guide their children in the digital world? Good morning and welcome back. We hope you're having an enjoyable day today and that the coffee break will keep you energized for the session ahead. My name is Ishani.
And my name is Philippos, and we're both members of the SIF Youth Advisory Group. Today, we're hosting the panel discussion where we will explore together how to support parents in order to protect and empower their children online. So we're delighted to be joined by an excellent panel that consists of policymakers, regulators, family advocates, and tech experts as well.
So let me introduce our amazing panelists. So we have Renate and Nikolay from DigiConnect, Dóra, Dávid, member of the European Parliament, Niamh, Hodnett, Irish Online Safety Commissioner, Gosme from PEGI, and Elisabeth Gosme, the director of COFACE. So my first question is to you, Renate. What are the main EU actions to protect and empower children online? And how exactly do parents fit into this work? And how is the European Commission doing to support them?
Thank you very much for the question, and thanks for having us here on the panel. I think we heard also from Julie from the Australian side that what we are all aiming for is to put friction in the system. I thought that was a very good phrase of kind of describing what we are all trying to do, because there's still too much, let's say, Wild West going on, not kind of, making sure that everybody in the system plays their responsible roles. Luckily, in the EU, we are well equipped with a regulatory framework, with the Digital Services Act, that gives us an opportunity to really hold platforms accountable for what we have set in the law, as you have heard from our Executive Vice President, a high level of safety, privacy, security for minors online, and we are filling that with life. How do we do that? It's kind of being tough in our enforcement actions against the very large online platforms for whom we are responsible at the EU Commission and DigiConnect, working closely with our partners, the national digital service coordinators who are in charge of the smaller platforms. For instance, Roblox, that we heard mentioning a lot today, is not yet a very large online platform, but of course, an aspect of that you have to take into account when thinking about minor protection online. So that's the important kind of cooperation network. Filling also the letter of the law with more life by giving guidance. That's why the guidelines that we have issued earlier this year to give more clarity, what do we mean by that high level of safety, security, privacy? What does it mean for addictive design features? What does it mean for default settings, of children's account? What does it mean for kind of examples for age assurance? What does it mean for age verification that might be necessary? And then, of course, there is the kind of, I would say, all society approach, where the parents come in, where, also, of course, what we have created with the, the safer internet system and the better internet centers is very valuable because they reach out to parents. The schools have to come in because we heard from Julie very often there aren't protocols how to deal with cyberbullying and things like that. And that's all very important. What I want to add maybe as a last point, if I may, is that the debate is far from being over.
Of course.
Whilst I say we have a good setting, a good foundation with the Digital Services Act and the AI Act to actually deal with the challenges. Deep fakes was mentioned, AI agents will come into play, as we heard, and that will be the next challenges to address in a more meaningful way. But the debate at the moment, and we will, I'm sure, hear that from Madame Dávid, in the European Parliament and in the Council of Ministers, so in the EU, is very, very active because people are worried, politicians are worried that we need to kind of look very closely whether there are still gaps that we need to fill, whether that is in the area of video games, whether that is in the area of kind of, children as consumers online. And I think that's a very valuable debate that we really want to engage in, very much building on the foundation that we already have.
Thank you so much for your input.
Yeah, perfect. So the next question is for Mrs. Niamh. We would like to ask you, at national level, How does the European legislation work with national laws, and how can we actually, and if we can actually, make a difference for parents and guardians as well in general?
I think we can, but I think it's important to recognise that regulation, while it will hold the platforms to account, is slower sometimes than parents or than children, young people want to see in terms of impact and change. So what we do in Ireland, so we're the Digital Service Coordinator in Ireland. We work closely with Renate and the European Commission, and we have a suite of online safety tools at our disposal. We have an online safety code developed under European regulation as well, the Digital Service Act, Terrorist Content Online, and also the AI Act. So these are all different regulatory tools we can use to hold the platforms to account, to make platforms safe for children. We require them to restrict, for example, cyberbullying content, promotion of eating or feeding disorder, self-harm, suicide, and incitement to hatred or violence. We supervise the platforms, require them to put in place age assurance in relation to adult content. So X, for example, who's established in Ireland, once we had our code in place in July, hadn't taken any steps in relation to adult content, so pornography or extreme or gratuitous violence. So we'd write to them and say, we note you haven't put this in place, please confirm what steps you're taking. And they did put in place age assurance measures later that week as a result of that contact. We're still considering in terms of supervision if it's enough or if it's gone far enough, but we are seeing impact and we are seeing change. Tumblr, for example, changed its terms and conditions to not allow adult content as a result of these contacts. But regulation is only one aspect of the whole online safety framework. It really is whole of society. So we've developed educational tools which we've shared with every secondary school in the country, and we're working with WebWise, where Ishani is part of the youth panel there, to support their development of further resources for primary schools next year. We have these on our website, so they're for parents, for schools, for children as well. We work very closely with the Safer Internet Centre to raise awareness. We're running, for example, a national domestic campaign at the moment across social media, across all forms of media to target children and young people, and also separately parents, just to raise awareness about these issues, because holding platforms to account, regulation, empowering children, informing parents as well. We think it's all part of the ecosystem. Not one aspect alone will make the change that's needed. Will it ever make it safe? I don't think it will, frankly, but we'll certainly make it safer. And we are seeing changes in that direction as well. There are global headwinds as well in terms of pushback against digital regulation in Europe also that we have to contend with. We think by being close to the platforms, a lot of the large platforms are established in Ireland, for example, and having conversations and using soft powers to try and drive behavioural change too. Everyone's aligned in making it safer for children online. We might be miles apart in terms of other areas of freedom of expression with America, but in relation to child protection, I think we're all quite close and aligned in that.
Thank you. You absolutely covered this.
So my next question is to you, Elisabeth. What are the challenges that parents are facing, and where exactly does the responsibility lie, and what do you think needs to change?
Thank you very much, Ishani. Can I just get a show of hand? Who is a parent or carer today? Right, well, that's a lot of different views on this topic. So, look, I'm going to express what we are hearing in the COFACE Safe Happenings Europe network. Challenges, clearly, parents and carers are under different forms of pressure. Increasing pressure. Even when we have media or digital literacy, we're having challenges keeping up. It's like a constant need for lifelong learning. But for lifelong learning, you need time. But we have to reconcile work and care. Some countries have great reconciliation of work and care on a societal level, others far less. So we also lack time to actually be first educators for our children. Look, I think another thing we lack is maybe parental guidance on how to have conversations with our children and conversations with different ages, obviously. So, where does responsibility lie? Of course, it lies in parents and families, but it's a societal responsibility, as I've said today, and that's why we welcome the regulations passed at European and national level. Of course, we need these regulatory frameworks. It's already been said by the Commissioner in Australia and others. We have strong expectations from the tech companies. If their products are not child rights friendly, they just shouldn't be put on the market. That's it, And of course, We're aware that sharenting is an issue. You know, parents have a responsibility and they need to understand the boundaries, you know, and the notions of consent and much more. What do we need in the future? I mean, a number of things. Where to start? Look, I mean, the online business models are really important. They've been discussed already. We need transparency in relation to the algorithms. We need a diversification of online business models, not only advertising, but subscription-based and others. We can innovate here. We need more, well, to support the challenges of the online world, we need to go back offline, consolidate social systems, education systems, health systems. Mental health was mentioned earlier. We need to consolidate those fundamental pillars of our societies which help us be resilient, right? One concrete example is a number of countries are rolling out family centres and hubs. In Estonia, Philippos, in Finland we have the family centres, in Belgium we have the House of the Child, Huis van het Kind. These kind of community-based hubs are really important spaces for parents and children to come together and get the support they need, universal and targeted. Clearly we can build on these spaces, you know, to do more digital parenting support. I can go on, Ishani, so I'll stop here.
Thank you so much for your views.
Yeah, so now, before we continue, we would like to point out the importance of gaming nowadays. So gaming is an activity that brings a lot of enjoyment to the vast majority of children, but there is a great many of hidden dangers that needs to be considered and sometimes are unnoticed even by the parents. So, Mr. Jake, as you know, a lot of focus nowadays is around social media and video sharing platforms, but what about video games? Given your expertise, we would like you to talk to us about age ratings, about their impact, their credibility, and how do parents and the world process them?
Yes, thank you. Some time for video games I think is absolutely relevant. I'm here on behalf of the Pan-European Game Information System. We help parents make informed decisions about video games. We give information about the content they can find in video games. That's not the whole story anymore these days, though. We've been doing this since 2003, but we have started to notice that parents have other questions about video games too. And they are related to the topics of online safety and social media, for example. They want to know with whom their kid is playing online and what they're saying or shouting at each other. They want to know whether their kid can spend money in video games and how that works. And they want to know, and this is not new for video games, how long they can play. Video game addiction, the screen time debate may be new for social media, but it's as old as video games are. Now, I have to explain that I wasn't supposed to be in this panel. I'm replacing Elisabeth Secker from the German system, USK. PEGI is used all over Europe, except Germany. Why is that? Because they were first. They had a fully fledged system adopted into law when PEGI was founded in 2003. And we're very happy to have them because they're the only ones that understand our problems. Talking to Elisabeth is like talking to the only person that understands how difficult age classification can be. Unfortunately, she fell ill. But I am going to spend some time on what USK has been doing. There's been an update of the Youth Protection Act in Germany 3 years ago now, and which led them to pay more attention to those topics that I just mentioned, the online interaction risks, which means online interaction, spending in video games, pressure to pay, pressure to play, all of those things. And they've integrated that in their age rating system. Now, PEGI doesn't have a law that governs them the way that USK has that in Germany, but the same topics have been on our radar too. And we've been paying very close attention, and that's why we're so happy to have USK as partners. We've been exchanging information to sort of see how we can also adopt these things. So we'll see an expanded use of the age rating system, but even that is not the whole story. It is the way for the industry to take its responsibility in terms of safety, but you can't do it without the parents. You have to involve the parents, no matter how difficult it is. We have to continue. As you said, we may not make everything safe, but we can make it safer. And you can only do that by continuing to try. So that's what we're going to do in the coming years.
Thank you.
So my next question is to you, Madame Dóra. In a report adopted last week, Parliament proposes a harmonized EU digital minimum age of 16 for access to social media, video sharing platforms, and AI companions, while allowing 13 to 16-year-old access with parental consent. What is this range based on, and will this not put an excessive responsibility on parents or delay the moment when children can develop digital literacy and resilience?
Thank you. Okay, well, let's start with why 16. First of all, research suggests that that's about the age when children reach sufficient maturity to be able to understand and handle risks independently. And then second of all, this age is nothing new. It's the GDPR age of consent, so our data protection regulation, although member states can lower this age down to 13, depending on their different national views as to when they think that children are mature enough to make decisions about their data. And third of all, this age range, so the possibility of access, but with parental consent, allows us to take account of the various different, or the cultural diversity in the different member states. So in member states where parents think that children are ready earlier to access these services, they can grant them access earlier. And then to the second part of your question, whether this doesn't put excessive responsibility on parents, right? I mean, what is excessive responsibility? Because at the end of the day, parents are responsible for the well-being of their children, but they need help with exercising that responsibility. We heard that earlier in the panel. They need to understand that there are risks in the digital world and that there are risks with some of these services, and they need help to navigate these risks. Otherwise, it's a battle of David against Goliath between parents and platforms. And I think it's also worth noting that when we're talking about the age limit, it's a one-time, it's at the point of access, so I don't think it's excessive, you know. And then in terms of delaying, what was the third part, sorry?
No, I was just wondering, would it delay resilience and like digital literacy between children?
Yes, so again, in terms of this, it's worth noting that it's not a full ban, right? Access is possible, but with parental consent, and that means it's a solution to balance children's rights to information and participation with their safety, while at the same time acknowledging parental responsibility, but empowering them to exercise that responsibility. And I think it's worth noting as a final point that the age limit, as we heard also on the panel earlier, it's not a silver bullet. There are no silver bullets. It's one tool in the comprehensive toolbox that we need to ultimately, you know, the ultimate goal is to make the online space safe.
Of course. And I would like to ask, like, would this make the vulnerable, like, even more vulnerable? Like, what do you think?
No, I mean, look, I think parents are, it's finding a balance, right, between children's right to participation and their safety, and parents are there, and Parliament, again, it's not a silver bullet, there's a comprehensive set of measures, and Parliament in our report focuses on lots of other measures to make the space safe so that everybody can have an equal level of protection. So whether it's to do with algorithms, you know, that exploit vulnerability to make children hooked to their services, we propose banning profiling-based algorithms for children. We propose to prohibit platforms from incentivizing so-called kidfluencing, which is a growing phenomenon that, you know, keeps children under constant pressure to perform and create content for more likes and views. We want to extend protections beyond social media to also video games. So there's an equal level of protection everywhere. So it's a comprehensive set of measures that we need so everybody, from the most vulnerable to the least vulnerable, are equally protected.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I believe the next question is for Mrs. Renate and Mrs. Elisabeth. We would like to know your thoughts on children that do not have parents, or children that have parents, but they are not that engaged with the internet and the technology in general.
Well, I think we have to kind of look at this from a digital resilience point of view. And digital resilience really goes for everybody. Parents, of course, have to be guided to kind of also become more aware of the risks so that they can play their appropriate role. But we also know that, indeed, the situations differ. Children, minors, teenagers growing into adultery is, of course, also a challenge for society to keep their critical thinking, to kind of guide them together with their development to becoming a resident of the digital transition, which we want, because that's what we all want. We want the digital transition. We want savvy people in the digital transition, you know, finding jobs there and really, you know, surfing kind of, you know, safely through this. And I think that's where a lot of aspects come together. Including technological tools, because that's something that we haven't yet discussed on this panel. We can actually also use technology to help us kind of equip us better. Let me give you a couple of examples. When you're thinking of, you know, there is certainly content on the web that is only for adults. And there we should have systems in place that ensure that nobody can simply self-declare, I'm 18, but that we have systems in place, that we have a solid, privacy-friendly, safe age verification structure so that we can all be assured, you know, that somebody is above a certain age. And here we are at the moment developing in the European Union because we all want to move to digital transition. So we will all have, by the end of next year, a digital wallet anyway in the EU that is interoperable. And what we're doing at the moment, working with some member states who wanted to pilot with us, to anticipate from that wallet, a so-called mini wallet, that would help us to identify the age, and that we will start rolling out, hopefully already in the beginning of next year in some of the member states. France and Denmark are very advanced, for instance. So that would be a great tool. Why? Because we are, for instance, in the European Commission, are also having enforcement actions under the DSA, against the so-called adult content platforms. We have European platforms on that matter. And so we are enforcing the law against them. So we are investigating if we now have a technological tool for age verification, as we have also said in our guidelines, it's of course very recommendable for these platforms to use that tool. So that we have a system that they can ensure, because at the moment you self-declare your age when you go with the platform. Not good enough for an effective minor protection. So that's just one example. And I found very thrilling what we heard from Julie this morning, that technology is also advancing and we are observing the same. And that's why also the cooperation with international partners such as the Online Safety Commission in Australia or Ofcom in the UK and others who have similar regulatory systems in place is so helpful. Technology can also help in kind of helping us detecting the appropriate age assurance tools. Or technology can help to identify actually, you know, deep fakes. So, you know, AI is a challenge because it makes it much easier to kind of create a deep fake. It's not costly anymore, everybody can do it. But at the same time, AI can be a detective tool to identify deepfakes. So I think we are in this kind of dynamic technological, you know, disruptive world where we have to kind of, you know, use it to our best interest. And I think that will be an important work of us regulators, policymakers in the future when we adapt to be agile enough to always catch up with the technological development and make them also useful for us. That will help also parents. That will help the system to actually equip us better. So I wanted to bring in that dimension.
Thank you, Renate. I mean, all of this is really important, obviously, the safeguards that you're trying to put in place, the efforts of the tech industry and I mean, I don't know how far we can go with AI today, but I mean, if I could just lend this to my 10-year-old, press a switch saying this is now for a 10-year-old, so anything on it will be for, or 10 to 12 or 13 to 16, but these default mechanisms and built-in safeguards are really important, especially for children who do not have parents. And as you know, families are very diverse today. We need to build technologies with that diversity in mind. And I guess to go back to then how to support children who do not have parents to use the parental controls, clearly we need to consolidate the education systems, the mental health systems, and for instance, ensure that there are mental health support workers in schools, so trusted adults that they can go to for help. Yeah, I mean, these are the kind of things I think that would need to be done on top of the obviously very important regulatory default settings.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now my next questions would be for Niamh, Dirk, and Dóra. So many member states are seeking to establish age restrictions on social media, and Australia will apply the world's first next week. What is the best approach for Europe, in your opinion?
Thanks, Ishani. That's not an easy question. And if I knew the answer, I would tell you all right now and we could do mic drop and go home. This is something I've been thinking about since I first became Online Safety Commissioner. What is the right answer in this space? And as a parent and as a regulator, I think we default first to safety. So we think we just want to make it safe. We just want to make it safe for our children and young people. And we can almost do that in a very emotive, not rational way, even for regulators. And I think really the answer is you have to put the child and the young person at the centre of it all and look at all of their rights in totality and the enjoyment that they get out of engaging in the online world. Sometimes as a regulator and as a parent, we go down rabbit holes and we just think about all the harms and all the dangers. And we forget that the vast majority of people and the vast majority of experiences are really positive for children and young people online, and that they are digital natives and that is their world, both the offline and the online world. And I have two teenagers who are 13 and 14, and similar to the panel members we heard first in the first panel, there's so many benefits. They find their tribe. I'm not sure if they've learned about quantum physics. They may more have learned about makeup and hairdos. But you know, there's so much education available out there for children and young people as well online. And I think a ban or a social media ban, first, it's then what other platforms would they go to? Would they go to Roblox? Would they go to, it could be quite a crude measure. So I think first and foremost, we have to consult with children and young people. We have a youth advisory panel like Coimisiún Meán, the Irish regulator, and we have consulted them on this question. And they're, I suppose, not in favour, I suppose, at a high level of a ban. There are nuances to that. They want it to be, of course, safer online. They want the platforms rather to be responsible for making it safer space for them, whether you're 13, 14 or 17, you're still a child. So it still should be an age appropriate space. So they really do want us regulators to hold the platforms to account in relation to that, and the platforms to take responsibility for more age appropriate space. I think we will learn a lot from Australia's social media ban, social media delay that Julie called out there. We signed an MOU with Julie yesterday. I know previously the European Commission has an MOU. So we'll be able to learn a lot from that experience. Does it actually improve children's mental health? Does it actually make it a safer space? So I think we need to be, well, we'll never be evidence-based because it all moves so quick, at least be evidence-informed. So what can we learn from that before we decide on what next steps in Europe? And while there's always a rush to push on, and I get it completely as a parent, for politicians and for regulators to what more action can we be taking, because we can't wait for a child to die, or we can't wait in this space because the risks are so high stake. But I do think before rushing in relation to this, we need to consult young people, hear from them, and learn from Australia where we're trying it, and also give our own regulation a chance to bed down as well. It's new. Like the Protection of Minors Guidelines is only in place since July. The Digital Services Act is only in place since February 2024. The AI Act and prohibited practices that again could help make things safer in this space as well. The enforcement of that only starts next August. So all of this needs to bed down as well and be given a chance to make it safer for children too, I think. But if I knew the right answer, I would be doing it. I think it's not a simple answer.
allow me to tag on to that, because indeed it was mentioned that video game companies are excluded from this, and I don't think that is a reason to celebrate. I don't think they get off for free. I think they need to be on their toes now. And in a sense that we are now looking at how the German age rating system USK has been expanding, I think it's interesting for Europe indeed to now take learning from how Australia is doing this. You know, the early bird catches the worm. It's the second mouse that gets the cheese. So this might be interesting for us. And learn from the good stuff, but also from the bad stuff. But when it comes to video games, if this all works, it doesn't mean the bad actors disappear. They may move somewhere else. And that's why video game companies are going to have to be on their toes. So it might mean that, yes, no, video games are not social media, but some have very strong social components. Now, I think the good thing is, and I would hope that the reason to exclude video games from that rule is that video games industry has a strong tradition of self-regulation, point in case. And already in 2007, here in Europe, we started with a program called PEGI Online. This was very early, but we've actually tried to recalibrate that every time and again. And 2 years ago, we actually started to implement this in our age rating system. What does that mean? Every video game with online interaction needs to supplement information to us. They need to supply us with proof of a privacy policy, proof of community standards in which they say what is not allowed in terms of illegal content or behavior or harmful content or behavior, and they need proper reporting mechanisms. And we need to see proof of that. Before they do that, they cannot receive a PEGI license, which means that they cannot release their game on the platform. Now, that doesn't get us to the finish, but at least what it means is we've set a standard. And I think that is also very important, that is standardization. Because if you have a couple of really good actors that give the example, but allow other ones to not follow that, you risk a race to the bottom. And that is why it is very important for systems like PEGI that we have a standardized approach across the sector, which I think is going to be the plan in Australia from the outset. So I have no worries that that is going to be a problem. But for us, it's something that we'll have to be very cautious about at every point in time.
Yeah, so I think it's important to note that we have a different starting point from Australia because we already have a good foundational legal framework that touches on the protection of minors online. We have the Digital Services Act, we have consumer protection laws, media laws, all touch on this area. And since we have a community of 27 member states in Europe that we have to reconcile everyone's national views and approaches, it means, I think, that we will come to a more nuanced approach in Europe. But it's also true that several member states are pushing for or are starting to implement or calling for a digital age of majority, which typically means restricting access subject to parental consent. And in my member state, Hungary, for example, there's also very high support for this solution, whereas a full or complete ban is pretty divisive. And I think, you know, the Australian-style full ban for under 16 sounds like a quick and easy solution, but actually I worry that, as Niamh said, that it detracts from what is really important, which is making the space safe. So I think, you know, this is what we did in Parliament in our report. We focused on creating a comprehensive set of measures that touches on all stakeholders, because everyone needs to play their part here. And that set of measures doesn't just involve legislation, but there's already a lot of things that we can do now because the problem is urgent. So one is, you know, enforcing or better enforcing our existing laws. And another one, of course, is digital literacy, education, and awareness raising. So I think the right answer for Europe is more nuanced, and it's a comprehensive set of measures.
Yeah, perfect. So if anyone from the audience has any questions, please feel free to ask. our panelists will try to address some of your concerns. You, there.
Hello, I'm Jad, and I want to address this question to Deputy Director General Renate Nikolay. If age verifications requires tying real-world identity to online activity, how do we prevent this from becoming a foundation of a mass surveillance program, especially once the political climate inevitably changes? Thank you.
It's a very good question, and that's why I underlined when I developed this technological solution that we are working on with anticipating the digital wallet in the mini wallet. This will not reveal your identity. This will be totally privacy-friendly and secure. The only thing that it will reveal is that you are above a certain age. That's a system that is built with different actors in order to avoid that it becomes a tool for mass surveillance, in order to avoid that it kind of goes against an important threshold that we have in Europe, which is our data protection regime, and in order to avoid that it becomes a gateway for unsafe kind of actors. So this is the concept that we have for the digital wallet, because as you can imagine, you know, we are 27 member states. We want to have an interoperable system that needs to be secure and privacy friendly. And that's why with anticipating that in the mini wallet, we are not making any compromise, neither on safety nor on privacy.
Yeah, hi, is it working? Hi, my name is Devansh, and this question was technically for the E-Safety Commission of Australia, but I think it's relevant even in a European context. Civic education and participation amongst youth depends on the spread of information. Unfortunately, our schools are brilliant in telling us our obligations, but not our rights. And we get a lot of our civic education and civic engagement on social media. So, in the future, if Europe decides to limit social media access, don't we run the risk of alienating youth in a society where anti-democratic rhetoric is already at an all-time high?
I'm very happy to just give one thought. We need to kind of, and I think it was said by many on the panel already, we need, everything we do here on minor protection online has to depart also from the context that children have rights and children have participation rights, including participation rights in the online environment. So there's a job for all of us to do to make sure that online environment is more appropriate for their age. That is a lot with what we can do here. That is also a lot on how we structure in the future our information system and the integrity of our information system online. It has to do with media policy that goes beyond the issues of this panel. But when we are, discussing what is the right comprehensive approach for Europe, we must always bear in mind that it has to be a balancing, as Madame Dávid has been saying, between the empowerment of the children and, of course, the protection against the harms that they can otherwise maybe not alone kind of juggle. That's what I would bring in.
Thank you for the question. I think, obviously there are so many different education systems and some are maybe better than others across Europe. But I think the general message you're giving here is really important also for us, is that if there are going to be bans, there need to be alternatives, absolutely alternatives, and that means strengthening activities, whether it's rights-based or civic education, but also just making cities more child-friendly, more activities, more playgrounds, so that children actually have alternatives. So it just goes back to, I think, what you were saying in terms of if there are going to be measures which are this extreme, which I don't quite believe, to be honest. I agree with the nuanced approach in Europe. There are 27 different cultures. I mean, completely different ways of engaging with technology. But I think if this does happen one day, we'll have to have a serious, good look at ourselves as societies and make sure that they're more family supportive and family and child friendly.
Is there any other question? Oh, yeah, go ahead, of course.
Thank you very much. Petra Kogelnik, European Parents Association. I wanted to react because I find it so beautiful, as was said also in the introduction by Marta and now also repeated by the panel by Elisabeth. I think actually we do not have a problem between what parents want or what adults want and what children want, because we've heard that children don't want to be controlled. They would like to have the freedom of really exploring the potential of these new media that allow them also to participate more powerfully in today's world. And adults are actually, especially parents, are overwhelmed. They feel that they are in a situation in which they want their child to be safe, but actually they do not want to have the need to control them. They would love to be doing without parental control because this is overwhelming them. It's too much. And as Elisabeth said, it's lifelong learning for which many parents don't have time, nor access, nor knowledge. So parents actually would love their children to be safely exploring an online world and participating in it. And I think this is really the call from the consumers that this consummation environment must be safe. It must be safe by design so that everybody can explore it and use its potential. So thank you very much for all the beautiful contributions today.
Hi, thank you for listening. My name is Iggy. Now, during the break, I got to test out the age verification app, and I just noticed two very blatant flaws, and I'm curious how you would overcome them. So I asked, and you can use the same passport on multiple devices. So I thought, what's stopping an older family member or friend from simply using their passport to sign in on a younger person's device? And also the use of VPNs. They are very easy to use. I think even a little kid could figure it out. Install it, click a button. You're in a country where the laws no longer apply. And I wonder, do you have any thoughts on these issues?
Yes, I mean, these experiences that you just described are very valid because, as I said, we are in the pilot phase. So users are piloting, tech companies are piloting, member states are piloting. This is exactly the kind of the learning phase we're in. We're at the moment also moving to the zero proof knowledge kind of, system where it's even a higher level of kind of, protection. Will it be 100% safe? Will it kind of avoid that people find kind of backdoors via VPN or other kind of ways to still kind of get it their way? Probably not. But it will make the place much more safer if we have a solid system. But if you have made that experience, then share it with us because it's really important that we kind of, gather that information in the piloting phase because that's exactly why we wanted to pilot, to learn and to get it better before we really bring it on a market.
And I'd just quickly like to add to that as well. The VPN point comes up a lot, but I think just because there's a risk of that doesn't mean that we shouldn't find solutions anyway. And if you think about, cigarettes, you can find ways to get someone to buy you a cigarette around the corner, give it to you, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't protect children from harmful things and risks like cigarettes. So I think overall, yes, it's great if you share knowledge and concerns, and we will do our best to address them, but I think that's not a reason to not find solutions to protect children.
Is there any other questions?
Yeah, thank you. I went out for a moment, so I hope this question was not answered, but this goes to Peggy Director. How can you ensure children respect age limits?
Is that for you? Is that for me?
The Peggy Director, how can we ensure that children respect age limits? Was that the question? Yes. You're not the target audience. Children do not need to respect the age limits. Your parents need to. As in, we make this to make parents feel comfortable about video games as a hobby. It's a benchmark, it's a tool for them. And in relation to the previous question, if a parent, in spite of all the advice and all of the technology and all of the measures says, it is my choice that my kid does this, who are we to overrule them, even if it's potentially not very good for the development of the child? It's going to be very difficult to interfere with that. So what we try to do is educate your parents. Tell their parents, your parents, to actually talk to you about video games. Because most of the time, you are the expert in the room. They tend to very quickly say, oh, I don't know much about video games. Well, that's not an excuse not to get involved, or at least to show an interest. If you then, explain how Minecraft works for like 40 minutes, because you keep going on and on and on and on about it, they might feel a little bit more comfortable to allow you to play that game, but also to have the conversation with you about rules, first homework, then video games, all of those things. It's about making parents comfortable about video games, because I think we don't need to, put your mind at ease. At the same time, when we talk to children and we ask them about age ratings, the typical 14-year-old will go like, I'm old enough to play that 18 game. No, I know video games, it's fine. And then you do a follow-up question, what about your 11-year-old sister? Oh, no, that's not good. That's not good. So they have a very interesting viewpoint towards themselves vis-a-vis their siblings. It's information that we also try to include in our narratives when we communicate to parents, like include your child in the conversation, but make sure that ultimately you are comfortable about the decisions that are being made about video games in the household.
Hi, so in that case, we still have a hole. What with children that does not have a parents? Who is going to protect them and who is going to decide for them? Thank you.
Usually in our communication, we talk about parents and guardians. I would hope that in Europe, we have the necessary networks in place to ensure that children without parents at least have a carer or a guardian. There are also then examples, children crossing the Mediterranean on a small boat without their parents. What do you do with them? Because we know these people have smartphones because it's an absolute essential lifeline. They are like probably the most difficult audience to get hold of. That means that they are the most vulnerable. That is why safety by design is so important, to make sure that what they are using, to make life work for them in Europe is not going to expose them to the worst harms, because they already are facing a lot of challenges without parents or guardians.
I suppose to follow up there, that's where we consider regulation comes in. So regulation sets the guardrails. It really translates what we consider in Europe as the fundamental rights that need to be respected and applied by the platforms. And we hold the platforms to account that there is a basic safety net there, that they have to respect the privacy, security and safety of children online. And that's where the regulators will step in and hold them to account where we consider they're falling short there.
If I may add to that, just also to bring back what Julie also said in her keynote this morning. I think already the mere fact that there are rules has already had the impact on the platforms, that they kind of, adapt a little bit their system. Far from perfect, that's why we're enforcing our rights, our laws on them, and we will be tough with them, and there will be steps taken if they don't kind of comply. But the fact that they all have safety by designs discussions in their kind of corporate boards, that they kind of set features that are, having stronger parent control aspects, that they have specificities for children's accounts, would not have happened if there hadn't been the laws that we adopted. So it's a journey we're on. It's not yet over. It's only early days that we are enforcing our rules, but the impact of the rules will be seen step by step.
We have now come to an end of our panel discussion. Thank you so much for our panelists for contributing immensely to our discussion today. We hope that our audience has gained a lot of valuable insights regarding how to better protect and empower their children.
Yeah, I would also like. I'm sorry. I would also like to thank our panelists for their undeniable contribution. Guys, thank you very much for your time and for your insights. Now we will pass the floor to the Big Youth panel, who will host a session in order to empower the parents and help them to raise resilient kids, so we can have a better outcome and a better environment for responsible gaming. Thank you very much.
We would also ask you to. We would also like you to appreciate our graphic illustrator's work who's been working on throughout the event. Thank you so much.